We are at war.
On one side of the battlefield are those of us who campaign for justice, for morality, for a world in which those we love can live freely and openly and without fear of who we are being taken away from us.
On the other, an enemy whose sole purpose is to take it all away, to corrupt and to weaken the very foundation of who we are as a people and replace it with hate and violence, all in the name of a warped version of humanity that will grind us all into dust if we do not stop it.
Most of us don't like to fight.
Battle is exhausting and dangerous, and few people have the skill and discipline to make it through in one piece, let alone emerge victorious.
We are decent people, unlike our enemy. And we have the strength to withstand threat after threat until we are pushed to our very limits.
That time is now.
The battle is here, on top of us. Our enemy is here, among us. And if our enemy succeeds, we will lose everything that makes us who we are.
This war must be won quickly and definitively. And the best way to do that is to expose the elements that threaten our society for exactly what they are.
This is a war against good and evil, of justice over injustice, of us versus them.
So, are you with us?
Or with them?
Now's the time to choose. And we're here to tell you how. Part 1. Who is them? That is a really good question. When it's us versus them, it's kind of important to be able to distinguish between the two, right? Luckily, as humans, we're really, really good at it. We have a natural tendency to make categorical distinctions between groups of people in an attempt to predict what they're going to do. And we'll do that no matter how silly or arbitrary those distinctions may be. So you have a red sticker, and I have a red sticker. Awesome, we're friends now. Hey, who the fuck is that? Blue sticker? They look kind of angry, don't they? I mean, blue stickers? But while we are more than capable of sorting people by stickers, whether they under or overestimate dots on a painting or eye color, most of our categories are socially constructed and then beaten into our heads until we literally don't think about them anymore. Categories like race and gender are so ingrained into our culture that sorting people into those boxes is an automatic response. In a study on unconscious social information processing, researchers found that participants interacting with gender or racial outgroup members were taxing their executive processes without even being aware of it. This is because social information, like the recognition that you're interacting with someone from an outgroup, can unintentionally alter your goals or perspectives outside of what they would normally be with your in-group. That's especially true if there's a power dynamic at play. If you think you have power in a social interaction, you're more likely to approach and facilitate behavior that would help you achieve your goals. If you don't think you have power, you're more likely to be inhibited in your approach and be more aware of your surroundings. So how do we know when someone we meet is one of them? Well, that brings us to our next study. Universal dimensions of social cognition, warmth and competence. There's no limit to the information we can seek to learn about another person, but from an evolutionary perspective, our lizard brains only really care about two things: their intentions and whether or not they can act on them. We judge these questions on two dimensions respectively. Warmth, which is how likable and trustworthy we perceive someone to be, and competence, how respectable and capable we perceive them to be. Of the two, warmth usually takes precedence because your intent precedes your ability to do it. If your perceived warmth of a person or group of people is low, if you think their goals are completely different or in conflict with yours, even if those goals are completely arbitrary, you see them as outgroup members. Competence, a measure of how intelligent or competitive a person or group is also a factor. Even if you don't like someone, you can still recognize when they're doing well, at least for themselves, and acknowledge their power and status. In a model of often mixed stereotype content published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, the researchers give us a helpful heuristic to, fittingly, categorize our feelings towards groups into 4 quadrants of stereotypes. In general, perceived status predicts competence, and perceived competition predicts warmth. The people we admire and respect are our in-group, those who score high on both competence and warmth. Their goals align with ours, so no competition there, and they're very capable of helping us achieve them. Those who score high in warmth but low in competence are perceived as neither inclined nor capable of harming members of our in-group, and usually garner a paternalistic or pitying stereotype. The groups who score low in warmth but high in competence inspire the envy and fear that comes with a group perceived to be very capable and not at all nice. And then there's the last group. Low warmth, low competence, eliciting uniform negativity.
These groups aren't capable enough to cause us harm, but they would if they could.
They're in direct competition for our resources, but unlike us, they aren't capable of putting anything back into the system to replace what they've taken.
Not only do they not share in our values, they have taken advantage of our goodwill to steal the things that we've worked for, that we deserve.
The parasites, vermin, not even human.
One of them. Part 2. Unmaking a person.
Philosophers have long asked the question, what does it mean to be human?
For Aristotle, it meant striving towards something greater than yourself, a purpose to know morality and pursue virtue.
For Descartes, it was the ability to be aware of your own mind, thus having the ability to reason.
For Hegel, personhood was defined in terms of powers, to be recognized as a force of will by another person.
To be human has forever been the most difficult categorization we try to make. A mishmash of intellectual ability, self-consciousness, property, tools, language, and soul that attempts and fails to discern us from animals and gods. But all that stuff is complicated and kinda scary, so we're going with brain electricity. Part of your brain that is absolutely vital in social cognition is the medial prefrontal cortex. It lights up when we see and recognize another person and doesn't when we see an object. Researchers in a study appropriately titled Dehumanizing the Lowest of the Low, Neuroimaging Responses to Extreme Outgroups published in Psychological Science showed photographs to participants of people and objects representing the 4 quadrants of warmth and competence from earlier. They found that not only did extreme low outgroups not activate the parts of the participants' brains that are supposed to activate when you see another person, but the parts of their brains that are responsible for fear and disgust did activate. Pride, envy, and pity are social emotions felt only in the presence of an actual or implied person, and the results of this study showed that not all outgroups are dehumanized, just the lowest of the low.
And when a group is dehumanized, well, what does it mean to be human?
Reason, morality, rights, empathy.
That stuff is for humans.
You could probably think of some notable historical examples of when entire populations, especially minority ones, lose their humanity in the eyes of a public desperate for a straightforward fix to their problems. For an outstandingly thorough and grim dive into the workings of the Rwandan genocide, check out this video, and pay close attention to the radio broadcast at the beginning for a chilling example of the people who have been robbed of their humanity and the aftermath that follows. Dehumanization and violence are linked, but fortunately it's not as simple as posters and radio turning otherwise good people into monsters. Not all dehumanization leads to violence, and not all violence stems from dehumanization. The mechanisms of war are far outside the scope of this video, so I'll leave it to more capable hands than mine. Dehumanization is 4th on the list of 10 stages of genocide developed by Dr. Gregory Stanton. At the root of it all, step 1 is creating an us and a them. Part 3. American Identity.
At times, you have to fight. No way around it. At some point, every one of us is confronted with danger or injustice. How we choose to combat that challenge is often life-defining. You can face difficulties head-on, or run from them, or ignore them until they consume you. But no one escapes conflict. No one.
This is the first paragraph from The Campaigns of Alexander, a cautionary tale of the toxic ambition to fight and win and own at all costs, and how, in the end, Alexander the Great still died like the rest of us, likely at the hands of his own men. No, I'm just kidding. That's the start of Bill O'Reilly's 2006 book, Culture Warrior, about how George Soros is secretly funding George Clooney to be mean to him at parties. But it does demonstrate how the language of literal war is commonly used to elevate disagreements into some grandiose struggle to win against an enemy. The first and last chapters are literally initial and final orders from Central Command. O'Reilly's book is dedicated to making sure you know that his enemies, the far-left secular progressives, not only don't think like you, but want to take everything away from you. You being the good American, the devotedly religious traditional warrior. Bill O'Reilly has a very narrow definition of what he'll consider one of us that excludes secularism and saying happy holidays, but doesn't include choking your wife and dragging her down the stairs. Funny that. But Bill is low-hanging fruit, and we can aim higher. In his last book, Who Are We?, Harvard professor Samuel Huntington says that historically, the substance of American identity has involved four key components: race, ethnicity, culture, and ideology. The racial and ethnic Americas are no more. He doesn't give a source for this last claim that racial and ethnic identities are no longer a part of the American identity. Probably because it's wrong. I actually have the physical book, but when I put it on camera, the lights that I have wash it out. So the book is literally too white. It's ironic, because he's racist. In an article titled American Equals White, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2005, the year after Huntington's book came out, researchers, including one of his fellow Harvardonians, that's a thing that they're called, right? Conducted 6 studies to investigate the extent to which American ethnic groups are associated with the category American. They found that despite a conscious, unambiguous personal commitment to egalitarian principles, participants still unconsciously associated white with American. In one of the studies, despite being aware of the nationalities of the people in the photographs, participants still found it easier to call white Europeans American than they did Asian Americans. The researchers state the implications of their findings clearly. The conclusion that can be drawn on the basis of the 6 studies presented here is unambiguous. To be American is to be white. In America, white men are the perceived cultural norm, and Anglo-Protestant culture has been the national identity, the thing that separates us from them.
That separation is vital to forming a group identity.
No group lives alone in a society, and we only know whether we're good or bad by comparing ourselves to other groups.
The most important component of making an us is constructing a them.
Part 4. Othering. In her book White Identity Politics, Ashley Jardina argues that white people, for possibly the first time in the history of the United States, are being made aware of their racial status, thanks to the growing diversity of racial and ethnic groups, and the subsequent political, social, and economic successes that threaten the dominant status white people have historically enjoyed. She posits a theory of dominant group identity, in which white people have experienced the normalization of their group identities such that being white in America means not having to think about being white.
It should go without saying that this applies to straight and cis people as well.
External threats from outgroups, whether real or perceived, can activate previously dominant group identities.
Whites, for the first time, are experiencing what it's like to be othered.
Othering refers to the general process of demarcating an outgroup and thereby reaffirming an in-group membership. It's a way of knowing who you are by knowing who you are not. It's creating an us by creating a them.
Previous studies that I've mentioned demonstrate that not only are we perfectly willing to group ourselves based on extremely arbitrary traits, but also that we're more likely to associate positive traits to our in-group and negative traits to our out-groups, and that cultural influence can deepen those arbitrary divides in our own subconscious. Out-group members are presumed not to share in-group beliefs, and in cases of extreme dehumanization, not even to experience complex human emotions. With this assumption comes projection. If I'm out for me, you must be out for you, and our goals just don't get along. In an article titled Othering Obama, the authors present literature that indicates that the election of black political leaders may promote white hostility. If you've designated someone as part of an outgroup, especially someone like a politician who's already going to have high competence but low warmth, you're very likely to see them as a threat to your interests. A 2009 poll in The Economist indicated that 65% of Republicans thought Obama's policies would privilege black people over white people. And another poll done by Harrison Pugh the next year found that a quarter of respondents believed the rumor that Obama wasn't born in America. For racially resentful whites, concerns about Obama's potential harm for white people, based on projection of racial motivations they themselves have, fostered characterizations of Obama and other black politicians as threatening outsiders. For a contemporary example of this, look no further than the racist harassment endured by Ilhan Omar. Othering someone makes it much easier to deny them their right to self-determination and view them only in terms of how they can threaten you. And when it's done on a societal level, like we do to non-white and queer people in the United States, it can have a profound impact on your personal or social identity. We want to be part of groups that contribute positively to our social identity, and when your identity is given to you by the more powerful people in society, the only way to assimilate is to give up your own agency, to stop being you and instead be them.
They determine how you get seen.
They set the tone for how you can speak.
And if you're good, you might win the right to try and be them.
Samuel Huntington says that multiculturalism is in its essence anti-European civilization, which sounds eerily reminiscent of something else. This is their ethos. If you don't live your life the way they tell you to, you are a threat. If you deviate from the very narrow norms that they set for you, you will be othered. And that claim to normalcy and virtue that you try and put forth will be treated like the infectious lie that threatens their very existence. Their identity is built on exclusion, on keeping other people out, on keeping things pure.
It's a terrible way to live. Luckily, we're not like that, right?
Right? Part 5. Undoing us. Feel that pit in the bottom of your stomach? That desire to click away just barely being suppressed by morbid curiosity and the need to know? Yep, we're going to talk about cancel culture, and I'm about to make some enemies. Nope, can't even do that for a joke. Please, I need you to like me. Cancel culture hasn't, to my knowledge, been defined in any scientific journals or academic literature, or even in that one video with the really good lighting. It's often used interchangeably with call-out culture, if we go by Wikipedia, or it's a recent internet phenomenon, if we go by Urban Dictionary, but I want to offer a new, more pretentious definition. Cancel culture is the general process of demarcating someone to an outgroup, and thereby reaffirming one's membership in an in-group. Yes, that is an overly academic way of describing Twitter sewage. I told you we were about to get pretentious. There's a common theme you see when analyzing tweets that have been deemed as contributing to cancel culture. This person did something bad, therefore they are bad. Even though we tend to give people the benefit of the doubt when we know nothing about them, when assessing someone's warmth, we're far more likely to be sensitive to information that disconfirms rather than confirms that positive perception. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, this could be due to our constant search for threats and the tendency to weigh negative social traits more than positive ones. After all, your survival is much more dependent on someone attacking you than not. And as we've already established, if you're already part of a disenfranchised group, you're way more inclined to be looking for threats. Negative warmth is diagnostic. If you have a bowl of soup with just a little bit of piss in it, you have a bowl of piss. Canceling someone, though, is more than just sending your bowl of piss soup back. It's creating an other that can represent something that you're not. When interpreting your own behaviors, you're more likely to apply measures of competence. Am I good at what I'm doing? Am I benefiting me? Things like that. But when judging someone else's actions, we're far more likely to read them through a moral lens. Is what you're doing good for me? What's more, the more we deem someone an outsider, the more they're othered, the more harshly we judge them through that moral lens. And really, if someone is just pixels on a screen to you, how close to your in-group were they ever really to begin with? This is a positive feedback loop that seems to happen daily in leftist spaces. People, very often marginalized people who feel powerless in society already, feel the need to be constantly on the lookout for threats. They see someone commit what they consider a moral transgression, and if that person had a tentative in-group status before, it's lost, because good people don't do bad things. And now you've done a bad thing. I can't trust you. Now that you're an other, I know you don't think like me, and if you don't think like me, you're a threat. And if other people defend you, that means they don't think like me either, and they're threats too. And the us is pruned and clipped and withered away until all that's left is them. Part 6. Belonging. So that's it? We're just destined to divide ourselves no matter what?
No, of course not.
For all our faults and predispositions, the most stable truth about the nature of humanity is that we are adaptable.
It's a cliche to say that hate is learned, but it's also backed by scientific data.
Research shows that even if there's initially fear of an outgroup, that fear will dissipate quickly as that outgroup just becomes part of your day-to-day life. It's society and culture that give any weight to trivial differences.
But how does that help us on the left, who always find new and exciting ways to hate each other, no matter how much we have in common?
And holy shit, how is that going to help us convince people who aren't on our side to help us get anything done? If you want someone, especially someone who has deemed you an other, or vice versa, to understand where you're coming from enough to actually listen and possibly even change their mind, they have to want to. And they're far more likely to want to give you a fair shake if you're nice to them. If you need a study that proves that, here's one, I guess. When individuals feel accepted from outgroup members, they internalize the desire to approach positive, egalitarian group interactions. Thank you, science, for proving that not being a shithead to someone is a good way to get them to come over to your side.
Why do you think white nationalists put on nice suits and talk like they just want to have a friendly conversation?
It's not because deep down they are warm and loving people.
Remember, warmth is the most important factor in determining whether or not someone is in your in-group, and the group that thinks like you.
Warmth signals that your goals, your real goals, are the same.
Intentionally othering someone, loudly declaring that they're not one of you, will at best force them to change their behavior in a way that is alienating and stressful, not unlike certain untenable economic systems. More likely, they'll just shove off and find another group that treats them nice and decide that actually, yeah, those are totally my goals and values all along. Self-determination theory states that intrinsic motivation, that thing you get when people are warm and accepting of you, is vital to really owning a position as well as your own psychological well-being. If we want to change minds and help people come over to our side, we have to appeal to their humanity. None of this is to say that we should avoid criticizing bad behavior, or that we have to play nice with fascists who literally want us dead. Please continue asking Stefan Molyneux which bodily fluids he uses to shine his head. And yes, there is toxic behavior on the left that will tear us apart if we don't work to fix it.
But there is a war going on.
They want to divide, to root out and destroy those of us who are different, to see the planet turn to ash before they ever see it evolve into something that doesn't exist to serve them. We can be different than them.
We can stand together, build each other up instead of tearing each other down, fix what is broken within ourselves and beyond.
We can do this because we believe that everyone deserves the right to live their lives the way they want to, and to seek happiness where they may find it, and help where they may find it.
We can do this because we see the humanity in everyone. Even them. So are you with us? First and foremost, thank you so much to the people who appeared in this video for me. Oreo, Javi, Kiara, and Amanda. You guys are amazing. You did such a good job. I think it really added to the video, so thank you for that. And also thank you to my patrons. Casey Explosion, Deborah Goldsmith, Frank Mores, Only Slightly, Red Venture, Sam, Sosh Daniels, Utah Outcasts, and Wait I'm Curious. You can also support me on Patreon if you really want to at patreon.com/sjwdebates. You can also follow me on Twitter at sjwdebates, and I hope to see you soon.